Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, the latest tech census will look at company culture, an update on key legislation that would impact Hoosier businesses. We preview Purdue Ag Week. Catalent is making big investments in what it calls the red-hot biologics sector. Indy schools get a boost from the Gates Foundation. We look ahead to the 2019 Indianapolis Indians season and perspectives on the top stories of the week from our panel of insiders. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Powder Keg is using its 2019 tech census to help drive more talent into tech companies by highlighting the cultures that make them unique. The 2018 tech census showed culture fit was the top reason employees joined or left tech companies. This year's report will take a deeper dive. Powder Keg co-founders Matt Hunkler and Kevin Bailey joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to talk tech.
Matt, I'll start with you. Powder Keg did a big census last year, 8 communities around the country, and really the results of that kind of sparked this focus this time around on culture.
Yeah, the thing that we found was so fascinating is there's lots of reasons people join a company and look to grow their career, but the number one reason people joined a tech company was the same reason people leave a tech company, and that is because of the company culture.
Talk about this census, because it really is a deep dive in connecting with companies around the state and what you hope to find out.
Yeah, really it's part of a bigger movement. Indiana is right at the heart of a massive shift that's happening in technology and just business at large. Right now, the Great Lakes region, of which Indiana is a part of, is growing faster than any other region in terms of investment dollars. That means jobs are growing in the state of Indiana, but we don't have the pipeline to fill it. And there's lots of great organizations looking to help fill it, but the gap is still growing. Yeah. And so this Tech Cultures edition really gives us an opportunity to highlight the amazing companies that are here in the state.
And Kevin, you know that movement firsthand as you launched and grew Slingshot with fascinating, phenomenal employee growth. You faced that challenge as well.
Yeah, certainly. Back in 2011, when we were the fastest growing company in the state, we really had to deal with this talent challenge. We hired about 50 people in 1 year, and we really focused on employer branding with Matt, who was actually on the team at that point, and that's what really helped us grow. So we're taking some of the knowledge from that, and we're applying it to all of our Powder Keg community members and network.
So this information that's coming out of this census can really be really useful for companies looking to grow, looking to scale, and increasingly there are a lot more around the state of Indiana.
Yeah, as Matt said, company culture is the number one reason that talent's joining tech companies. So the tech census is really focusing on company culture, and we're actually developing company culture profiles out of the data that's highlighting reviews, what it's like to work there, as well as some really interesting data around basically the things they said, that tech professionals said last year, the things they want to see in employers. We're showing that information publicly with companies, and it's looking pretty cool right now.
You talk about the movement, the momentum in the Midwest in particular, outside of the coasts, that there's a lot more focus now when it comes to venture capital, investment, company creation, and those types of things.
Yeah, it's something I've seen sort of with the last decade of my career. I've been focused on building the tech community here in Indiana, but also just the last several years traveling the country, seeing firsthand, working with organizations like Rise of the Rest, AOL co-founder Steve Case's organization, investing in companies in the middle of the country. And there is just an explosion right now of opportunity for those professionals, for those companies that are able to hop on this trend.
But obviously the key is going to be that talent to fuel these companies. Culture an important part. The census will be an important part in terms of information. Kevin, as you look at the challenges facing tech companies looking to grow in Indiana, what would they be?
I mean, obviously talent's the big one. This is really the prime thing we're focusing on. There's a number of challenges outside of that, but this is the big one. Yeah. It's a great problem to have.
Yes, right.
We're growing really quickly. The demand for jobs is way up. I think it's something like 1.4 million open software positions are estimated by 2020. We've grown our tech job postings by 85%. That was from cyber states. You guys recently covered that. And this is the big problem. We solve this, we've got it.
Yeah.
And I think talent brand and employer branding is just a huge part of this to make our state a magnet.
Very good. Matt, 20 seconds or so left, but the initial reaction to this survey has been really good.
It's been overwhelming, and that's thanks in part to a lot of our partnerships that we have. Dozens of community organizations around the state that we've partnered on. We've already had hundreds of companies apply to have the tech census done, hundreds of responses, and we've got the whole month of April to get this completed. So if you're a tech services company, if you're a tech product, hardware, software, tech-powered, take the tech census and get some more exposure for your company. It's free, and you can just go to powderkeg.com/register.
Very good. A major tech census underway now in Indiana. From Powder Keg, Matt Hunkler, Kevin Bailey. Thank you both for some great perspective. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Gary.
All right.
Thanks.
Still to come, a preview of Purdue Ag Week, and a relative newcomer to the life sciences scene is making big investments. But first, as the legislative session approaches the home stretch, several bills impacting Hoosier businesses remain up in the air. They include hate crimes legislation, various tax measures, and the state budget. Indiana Chamber of Commerce President Kevin Breniger came in studio with an update.
All right, let's talk about the bias crimes, hate crimes legislation. There was an amendment put in this week to add protections, but some suggest it doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, it's not all that we would like in terms of being specific on the protected categories, but it does have some what we call general language that says the judge can enhance a sentence for a hate crime against anybody based on their characteristic, their trait, their religion, etc. And it's believed that would, by the authors and by Speaker Bosman, that would cover anybody and everybody. We and the governor would like to see a longer enumerated list that would include age, gender, and gender identity. But it appears that what we have is as far in that direction as the House could go and still pass a bill. It now goes to the Senate, where the Senate author will have to decide, does he want to try to amend it further and take it to conference committee or file a concurrence motion. The word in the hallway is that they're likely to file a concurrence motion and perhaps vote on this bill as early as next week.
I'll keep an eye on that. Big news on the technology front in terms of a number of kind of tax-related bills, yes. Data center legislation, VC tax credit that are moving along.
Yes, there's a couple of really good bills for the technology and entrepreneur community. One is a bill that would allow incentives for data centers. They wouldn't have to pay sales tax on the equipment, and they could get a property tax exemption with a certification from IEDC. This could be a big boon for data centers here in Indiana. And then the governor's economic development bill modernizes several of our existing economic development incentives and would make the venture capital tax credit transferable, which makes it much more valuable and allows Indiana startups to attract investment from out of state much better.
A lot of interest in teacher pay as it relates to the budget. Where do things stand there?
Well, the Senate is now working on its version of the budget, the Senate Majority Caucus. We expect to see that revealed next week or certainly the week after, because that'll be the deadline week. And there will be some changes. They'll put their stamp on that. The other key variable in this budget equation is the mid-April revenue forecast update. And depending on whether that goes up or down or stays about the same, that'll impact what they put together in the conference committee report. I don't expect big changes in the key area of teacher pay because, frankly, they just don't have the money to put into that. I know Senator Mitchell is trying to find some savings in DCS and some other places that could possibly put in there, but I don't see big changes right now.
Very quickly, back on that data center bill, I heard some people talking about the abatement and how the length of abatements that could happen. But to get those lengthy abatements, companies would have to invest a pretty big number. A
massive amount. I believe the number is $750 million to get that very lengthy 50-year abatement.
Yep. All right, Kevin Breniger is also some great perspective on activities at the Indiana State House. I'm sure we'll have you on again very soon to talk about what's next.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Later in the podcast, an Indiana company is bullish on what it calls a red-hot biologics sector, and Indy-based Crossroads Education gets funding from a big-name source. But now, Purdue Ag Week is underway, highlighting the work the ag industry and Purdue Ag specifically are doing. The idea of the 8th annual event is to educate the student body about the importance of food and ag. Indiana State Department of Agriculture Director Bruce Kettler and Purdue Ag Week Task Force Chairman Dane Chapman joined us with more.
We're going to talk a little bit more about Purdue Ag Week in a moment, but Bruce, first of all, ag is such an important part of the Indiana economy. This is an important time of year, certainly. How would you assess the health of the state's ag economy?
Overall, I would say it's okay. It's certainly difficult. The markets for commodity, the prices for the commodity crops are not as strong as we'd like to see. The livestock sector's having it a little difficult as well. Certainly dairy obviously is very affected. But even the pork, poultry is okay. Pork has been affected, but we've seen some uptick a little bit in pork recently. So it's okay, but my experience is people in agriculture and farmers are always going to be optimistic. They're ready for another year.
Absolutely. Should ask you as well about a rural economic development strategy that you've rolled out around the state of Indiana. How's that being received?
It's being received very well, and the part of this was to look at where our ag assets were in the state, what ag assets we have, and then get the local and regional economic development teams engaged in understanding that agriculture, just like manufacturing or other sectors, is an important part of their business, and get them thinking about how they might take advantage of that.
Yeah, Dane, agriculture, the importance of agriculture, really at the heart of Purdue's Ag Week, something that has grown substantially over the last 6 or 7 years. Talk about next week and what it's going to mean on the Purdue campus.
Yeah, so April 1st through the 5th, we're having a week-long event, and there's 20 students on Ag Week Task Force, and we're really serving the purpose to inform, promote, and engage agriculture and the importance of agriculture across campus, especially on a campus that involves agriculture as well as engineering. Yeah. Not everyone understands the importance of that, and that's really the purpose of the event.
World-class university in those areas, certainly, and as we were talking off camera, agriculture is about so much more these days than just corn, soybeans, and livestock.
Absolutely. Only 2% of agriculture is actually production agriculture. And a lot of our students that are part of Ag Week Task Force don't come from an ag background. So seeing them engaged in the way that they promote agriculture to other students who might not know about agriculture is really interesting, and I think is really able to connect with other students.
We quickly want you to mention Hammer Down Hunger. It's a project that is part of the week and is grown exponentially.
It has, yes. So our president is really happy with us. We've had about 150,000 meals is what we're packing on April 2nd. In the past, it's been 70,000 meals. So it's been more than doubled, and that's in light of Purdue's 150th anniversary. Yeah. It'll take about 1,000 student volunteers to do that in about 5 hours, and we'll be doing that under the lights of Ross-Ade Stadium. Very so it's going to be really fun.
Good. Yeah. And Bruce, I know you're very supportive of Purdue Ag Week. It's important to the organization.
It is. It's important to the State Department of Agriculture. That's why we, along with Corteva, Lieutenant Governor's Office, are supporting Hammer Down Hunger. We're going to be there. I'm going to be there. Several of our employees in our department are going to be there to help pack. Again, we think the engage piece is really important, and we're just glad that the students at the College of Agriculture are doing that.
Big week ahead at Purdue University. Certainly Bruce Kettler, the state's director of the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. Also, Dane Voris on the task force at Purdue. Thanks very much for joining us.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funds an Indy nonprofit, and we get ready for the Indianapolis Indians season. But first, Catalent entered Indiana's life sciences landscape about 18 months ago and is growing rapidly. The company is investing more than $100 million into its Bloomington site, reflecting what it calls a red-hot biologics sector in the state. General Manager Dennis Johnson joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
So the Bloomington site focuses on biologics. Explain that niche area of pharmaceuticals and why it's so hot right now.
Well, biologics are larger molecules. So when you think about traditional pharmaceuticals that make up 90% of the drugs out there today, they're small molecules, and they tend to go throughout the body, where large molecules you can target cells more easily. So if you think about whether it be cancer therapies, oncology, immune diseases, or other treatments where you want to focus on certain cells, biologics is a tool set where by growing the molecules, you can produce much larger molecules that are targeted on specific cells.
And Catalent has been in Bloomington about 18 months. You've grown from 12 commercial products to 20. So fast growth, investing $114 million in the facility. What new capabilities is that going to give you in Bloomington?
Well, it's giving us a lot more capability to produce at high volume. What we're seeing is that a lot of our production and of development of molecules have moved through the pipeline, and we have over 20 commercial molecules now and 120 in development. As they go into commercial, the volumes increase significantly. And with that increase, we have to be ready to support our patients and the clients' needs. So we have to double fundamentally our capability by introducing 2 new high-speed filling lines for syringe and for vials.
Impressive. You've also created or planned to create 200 jobs in Bloomington by 2024. So tell us a little bit more about your hiring plans and just thoughts in general about the labor pool in Bloomington.
The labor pool is really good. We're blessed to have some very good universities in the area and local colleges such as Ivy Tech. We have IU obviously in Bloomington. And then up the road not too far, we have Purdue and even Rose-Hulman, which both have very good engineering programs. So we're really lucky. And we've been able to grow. And in fact, we're probably running ahead of our original plans. Today, we're over 950 people here on site. And when you go and look at the site 10 years ago, we were 270. We believe in the next 3 months we'll actually top out at 1,100 for the year.
Well, it's good news for the Bloomington area. What sort of disease states do the products that you make there? What disease states do they really tackle? Can you tell us that?
Well, I can't speak about specific clients, but I can say that we do business with 18 of the largest 25 biotech companies out there. So if you look at the biotechs, there's a lot of different disease states where you're trying to target specific cell areas, right, without damaging other cell areas. And that can be with cancer therapy, oncology, that could be with autoimmune diseases, that could be with inflammatory diseases. So if you look on the news and you hear about a biologics, we touch 18 of the largest 25, and with over 120 molecules currently in development, 20 in commercial production, we're one of the leading sites for producing biologics.
Bloomington is really known for having a strong pocket of life sciences company. Does that legacy there help create momentum for you to grow your work at Catalent?
It really does. And when you look at the industry, there's been waves that have driven longer lifespans over time. You know, if you go back to the invention of aspirin as we know it today, which happened in the early 1900s, the lifespan was around 46 years. We're up to 76 today, and I think that trend is driven by a series of technology improvements in medical care. And some of the pioneers are in this area, and our Hoosiers, such as with Eli Lilly, such as with Bill Cook down in Bloomington. That is a legacy. Now I think biologics is the next wave. And we're leveraging the skill sets and the people and the knowledge that we're lucky enough to have in the area.
And just the beginning of the wave. Thank you for being here, Dennis, and good luck with the growth.
Thank you.
Later in the podcast, a preview of the 2019 Indianapolis Indians season and perspective on the week's top stories from our panel of insiders. But now, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has presented Indy-based Crossroads Education with a grant designed to help local schools build the future workforce. 4 schools will use the funding to design, build, and activate innovative learning spaces for students. Crossroads Education CEO Kevin Burkopes has more in our Eye on Education segment.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
This is a big get, $750,000 from a major foundation. To start, though, give us the model at Crossroads Education. You're really focused on this so-called Learning Commons model.
Yeah, that's the brand and the model for what we're trying to do. So we started with this idea that we're asking too much of our classroom teachers. We have great teachers. We have great people in education. And we sort of feel like there's a way that as we move forward in the digital age that we can support those teachers. And what is in every single one of the schools is young people. And they're right now learning passively in classrooms despite a heavy effort by our teachers. And so we started asking the question, why aren't they teaching? Why aren't they a part of this process? And the Learning Commons is really an answer to that.
You are an education startup launched about a year ago or so and have grown very nicely over the course of the past year. The model started at the college level, right? But now you've pushed it down, so to speak, and this grant deals in particular with K through 8.
That's right. So one of the best things about Indiana institutions of higher ed is that they're focusing on taking these professors and spinning up businesses. We got an opportunity to do that when I was at IUPUI, and then from there, as we've transitioned out, it's grown nicely, and we have this great opportunity to spread this in central Indiana.
All right, let's talk about the grants from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the world's largest, best-known foundations. Quite a coup to get $750,000.
It's great. I mean, it's a national recognition of what we're doing here in Indianapolis. There's a great partnership between all the different institutions. There's a real rise of this sort of thing in the city. And we've been told, they usually invest East Coast, West Coast, Chicago, the typical stories that we see here in Indy, but we think it's a great place. We have a lot of really talented people here, and we're happy to be a part of that and tell the story.
Talk about how the money will be used to impact students. I know 4 schools in Indianapolis, and these are in challenging areas that are being targeted.
Yeah, it's a passion of ours. So we want to go into the lowest resource neighborhoods in our city, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that despite Indianapolis is rising in its national exposure, that we still have areas at home that we need to work on. We think driving education is the way to do that. So we're using this grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to invest in some of the lowest resource schools in our city and the lowest resource students in our city.
And you really feel there's a direct correlation to workforce. That's such a huge issue, obviously, in Indiana, a big connection here.
Yeah, I think so. So workforce development to us is that the soonest you can get a job, the better you're going to be in terms of your capacity to understand what it means to work and develop. So we have as young as 3rd graders in the city right now that are being trained to educate and work with each other as a support network for that great teaching. And now we see everything from 3rd to 8th graders to high school kids to college kids in the city, and they're learning what it means to work, develop, and collaborate. And those are some of the intangibles that make the best workers in our city.
What are your expectations with this grant and in these 4 schools, the metrics that may be used? I know you tout the performance of the model. How will that, what are the expectations?
Yeah, so Gates wouldn't have invested in us if we didn't have the right type of momentum in terms of metrics, but they've provided us with a really great company called Mathematica to really set these metrics so that we know that we're working towards a national scale. And that's one of the best things about this partnership is that we're being held accountable to be successful.
And as we wrap up, and you mentioned a national scale, you really feel this model that has been successful in its first year can really be replicated and scaled up nationally.
Yeah, so the right partners throughout the state, we believe this is an Indiana thing. We want to scale that nationally, and we believe that within 10 years from now, people are going to ask or question why students weren't teaching in the school to begin with.
Fascinating story. Kevin Burkopes is the CEO of Crossroads Education, $750,000 grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Kevin, congratulations. We'll be following the story.
Thanks for having us back on.
Right.
Still to come, our panel of insiders weighs in on the week's top stories. But first, the Indianapolis Indians open their 118th season Thursday at the Columbus Clippers. Victory Field opens for its 24th season a week later. Indians president and general manager Randy Lewandowski joined Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports with a preview.
Always a rite of the onset of spring, thank goodness. And I know you're excited about another great season of Indianapolis Indians baseball.
Well, we sure are. It's been a tough winter, I think, for everybody here in central Indiana. And as spring breaks start and come to a close and the Indian season gets ready to roll out, we feel like we're part of that rite of spring in Indianapolis, and we're looking forward to another great year at Victory Field.
And again, the Indians have done such a magnificent job historically. Last year, again, second in all of minor league baseball in attendance. I think you've had the highest cumulative attendance over last 6 or 7 years. How does that all come about?
Well, it's really where we set our goals and how we feel like we judge ourselves. The minor league baseball model is a little different, where wins and losses, while they matter, aren't really what drive the bus, so to speak. So for us, it's about attendance, and we've prided ourselves on being an industry leader, and I think it's really just what our mindset, what most of our goals are set toward during the off season as we plan and prepare. And it's something that we've taken great pride in with our attendance accomplishments here over the last 6 or 7 years, as you said.
And the ballpark experience, anybody that goes to Victory Field understands, it really is a wonderful evening experience, or daytime, whenever you go.
Well, and that's really what we've built it around, is that experience to create great memories, great experiences for our fans, of all kinds. And it's whether it's date night, whether it's group business, whether it's corporate business, whatever it might be, we think there's a little bit of everything for everybody. And we've built it around the Victory Field experience. We take great pride in the facility. And it's something that, we're going to continue to strive to do.
Season opens April 11th, Thursday night. You got Charlotte coming in, and you're going to have the temperature guarantee in place as always.
We will. We've been doing that for about 10 years now, and we'd love for that to be about 59 degrees.
Yeah.
We do like to give that ticket away. We like to bring people back in April, of course, if it's not 60 degrees on that guarantee. Fans get another ticket to another April game, and April traditionally is our slowest month of the season, but a lot of excitement about opening day. We feel like we're going to have a really strong team, a young team, but it's just really exciting. And to talk about weather, to tie it in coming off of a tough winter, as I said earlier, if we can get to that 60 degrees or just right around it, we'll be really excited about that.
Well, and then last year, as you went along, of course, again, we had a very late winter last year, but when you got rolling, when we got into May, averaged more than 10,000 fans a night for the rest of the season.
It is, yeah, and so we end up with about a 9,000 average over the course of the whole season. Our goal, really, when we can start putting up 5-figure dates for us, usually starts mid to late May, summertime. That's really what we're about for the sights and smells of the ballpark, and it's just our job to let people know in Central Indiana when we play, and we'll host them, and they'll have a great time at Victory Field.
On-field product, Brian Esposito back for his second year as the manager, and what are the expectations there?
I think the expectations are high. We've heard the Pirates brass say that this will be the most prospect, talent-laden team they've brought through Indianapolis. And if you can believe it, we've worked with the Pirates since 2005. So going into our 15th season of affiliation with them. We've got a shortstop by the name of Cole Tucker, 6'4". You don't see many 6'4" shortstops. Third baseman, Cabrian Hayes. His dad was Charlie Hayes, played in the major leagues for a really long time. Second baseman, Kevin Kramer. Last year played really well as a AAA rookie. And then we've got a big first baseman, Will Craig, that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. So our infield all those guys are prospects. Jason Martin and Brian Reynolds in the outfield. And then we do have the Pirates' top overall prospect, Mitch Keller. He'll likely be our opening day starter. Don't know that for sure. But he's a top 20 prospect in the entire game. Got a taste of AAA late last year. Struggled at the beginning, righted the ship a little bit. The Pirates are really excited about him, and another guy by the name of J.T. Brubaker as potential rotation guys up in Pittsburgh.
All right, Randy, and again, season opener coming up April 11th. People want to get to the ballpark. How do they do it?
Well, IndyIndians.com is certainly the best way to reach out to us and buy all your tickets online. Obviously, you can call us at 317-269-3542, but really it's IndyIndians.com. That's our best means and methods to come out and enjoy a ball game.
Well, it won't be long. Take me out to the ballpark. Randy Lewandowski, thanks for being on the show, and we look forward to another great season of Indians baseball.
And finally, our panel of insiders offers perspective on the top business stories in Indiana. This week's panel includes Bose Public Affairs Group Principal Roger Harvey, Fox Global Senior Vice President Francesca Jarosz Brady, and Katz Corin Cunningham co-founding partner Norris Cunningham.
A lot of activity on the tech scene this week. A couple things, Roger. One, an annual tech survey, if you will, throughout the Midwest came out. A tech report on employment showed Indiana tech employment jumping up nicely, a couple percent in 2018. Indiana, I think, ranks 21st in the country in tech jobs. Right. So we hear a lot, we report a lot on tech jobs. It seems it's kind of filtering out into the public now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, obviously the big names get a lot of the attention,
right,
whether it's Salesforce and some of the other announcements that you've covered, but there are a tremendous number of smaller companies out there, not just in Indianapolis, around the state, and I think it's been impressive to see some of those mid-level communities, the tech scene there growing, so whether it's Bloomington or Lafayette or even up in South Bend.
Yeah, it's a great point that a lot of startup activity around the state of Indiana and increasing focus on the Midwest. Steve Case, the AOL co-founder with his Rise of the Rest, which is all focused on activity, not on the coast, but in the Midwestern part of the country, beginning to kind of get the attention from folks.
I think that's really interesting. And, I think part of what's driving it is, 10 years ago, if you were in the tech industry, Silicon Valley was the natural hub. Pricing and housing prices there have just gone through the roof. And I think the affordability crisis that we're seeing in a lot of the coastal cities is really causing people to think differently about where they live. And Indianapolis is well positioned to be among the top cities when it comes to attracting talent, which is great.
I'd add too, just to give it a little bit more context as well. So we're 38th Indiana in population. in the country, but we're now 21st, as you mentioned a moment ago, when it comes to net tech employment. And that really speaks to the fact that we're becoming more and more a destination, right, for these types of high-paying and high-wage jobs. And so the focus is really going to have to continue to be on workforce development, making sure that we've got the pool of employees to be able to attract more tech industry, and continue to be, I think, the kind of destination place from an economic standpoint, from a financial standpoint, keeping the cost of living relatively low in comparison to many other places in the Midwest, and we're going to do well.
Yeah, there's a competitive environment out there, certainly. Another tech item this week was Powder Keg, the tech networking platform that is growing not only in Indiana but around the country. Going to be doing a big tech census of companies all over the state. It's going to focus on culture. And one of the things they found out from a census they did last year is that the number one determinant in someone taking a job at a tech company is culture, and that's the number one reason they may leave as well.
Which is great, I think, in the sense that, as Norris said, that positions us well for growth as we think about Indianapolis as a destination. If I'm making a decision about where to work and I'm looking at culture as one of the key assets, Indianapolis has a great culture. I think the Midwestern friendliness is really part of who we are. So if we can really kind of analyze what companies have to offer in terms of a healthy culture, more people are going to choose to come here, especially for tech jobs.
When you talk about culture and inclusiveness and those types of things, we're going to jump ahead to a story we're going to touch on later, but the hate crimes legislation at the State House has certainly been in focus. There was an amendment placed on the bill this week that would, I think, potentially get Indiana off this small list of states without comprehensive hate crimes legislation. How do you see that ending, or how do you see Indiana coming out from a perception standpoint in that situation?
Well, I think the good news when it comes to perception is that now we are off the list, and that's a powerful thing when it comes to national perception. The bad news is we didn't really finish the job. When we talk about a comprehensive list of groups that are included in that legislation, we left out some really important groups, namely gender identity. So I'm hopeful that in the future lawmakers can revisit that and add gender identity in to make it a really inclusive list so that everybody is part of protections.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the next week or so, you'll see this issue get resolved at the State House real quickly, and something will move on to the governor's desk. And I think, in the future, perhaps as early as next session, the business community will still come back wanting to expand those protections, as was mentioned, because there is a strong belief in the business community that we need to have all the protections in place so that we do become a state that attracts the top talent, and that we don't have these speed bumps, if you will, preventing people from coming here.
It strikes me that first of all, getting off the bad list is a good thing, right? We can all agree on that. There's no doubt about it. Getting off the small list of states who had no protection at all with regard to hate crimes and biases is important. But that certainly should not be where it ends. And part of the difficulty, it seems, from how long and sort of drawn out this process has been, is that it may be the case that for many folks, that's all they really wanted to do, was to make sure that we got off the bad list. And as long as that's accomplished, then it matters less, really, whether or not we protect gender identity and so on. So we're going to have to revisit this, I think, because a lot of folks still believe that there's work to be done here.
Yep. Certainly talent, workforce development, huge issues in the state of Indiana. Interesting partnership announced this week in Fort Wayne. Mayor Tom Henry there announcing a partnership with Shambaugh and Sons, essentially trying to create higher wage employment opportunities in the city in the construction and other related fields. Norris, as you look at that, pretty creative idea.
Creative, exciting, really, Gary, I think in a lot of ways. And Mayor Henry really should be congratulated, first of all, for the Fort Wayne United program, its focus on African-American men and boys, and trying to make sure that they can be included as much as possible in the workforce. And now you have this public-private partnership with Shambaugh and Sons for these really relatively well-paying jobs. giving these folks an opportunity, I think, to learn and to grow as individuals, knowing that they've got a job that's waiting for them after they go through this 3 or 4 month training period. This really is exciting, and it shows what public-private partnerships can do to really sort of affect positive change in a community.
Also a unique idea, if you will, in one of the state's top tourist attractions, the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, announcing a more than $27 million project. Essentially, they're getting paleontological, they're getting artifacts, we'll call them that, and they've essentially bought a site, right? They bought property in Wyoming. They're going to mine that and bring those artifacts back to Indiana.
Yeah, which will add to what is already an amazing Dinosphere exhibit.
Right.
Yeah, and I have to say, as the mother of a 16-month-old, I was not interested in dinosaurs until the last year, and now I am a dinosaur fan.
By the time they get here, you'll be really
I'll be really a
interested.
fan. Yeah, I've been to Dinosphere too many times to count.
Very good.
I'm just happy that I know what a brachiosaurus is.
Very good,
I didn't know
Norris.
that before.
That's very good. As we wrap up, another big attraction, of course, is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Brickyard 400. It's got a longer name now. I won't get into that. But the Brickyard 400 changing, going to the July 4th weekend.
Who knows? It might be in the 70s, July 4th, right? 120-degree heat index.
A good move. I mean, NASCAR, NASCAR and the Speedway, both of them have been working together, trying to tweak and to do things to get that attendance level.
Right. I think it is a good move, and I think too, when you look at the big picture, NASCAR potentially reducing the number of races in the season, it'll add even additional exposure and interest to it. And when you think about the 500 being over Memorial Day weekend, and now you're going to have the 400 over the 4th of July weekend. It's almost like a patriotic pole position of sorts, right?
It is, and then the big drag race out west is Labor Day weekend.
Right.
So we've got all the holiday weekends covered with racing. With that, we'll end another Insiders segment with Roger Harvey, Francesca Jarosz Brady, and Norris Cunningham. Thank you, one and all.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.